I went into the wrong stream. Now nobody's here. Oh, this is what happens. I went to the wrong stream. All right, where is my entire screen? No, sorry about that. So sorry. I'll have to send a new thing. All right, I'll have to do a bunch of editing. Not so much in the where did my picture go? I guess I'll just do that. Nope, that's the wrong one. I'm not ready for you yet. Oh, that's a bummer. All right, so sorry about that. I set up both streams. I am on the way. I am here. Yes, thanks, Jack Hole. Let me just write that in the chat. Yeah, so I scheduled two things. So I use Restream for this. I scheduled two events, and they both popped up. I wish Restream would tell me, oh, this was scheduled for tomorrow. Are you sure you want to do that? So now I'm gonna have to go in and fix things. Yeah, I'm gonna have to fix that. There we go. Let me just go ahead and set that. No, I don't want to do that. Set that to private. Yeah. Oops. I'm gonna have to take that down. I'll have to redo another one. That means I have to send him another link. Okay, so so I guess Tank Pow. Hey, Tank Pow, I haven't seen you in a while. Play a homebrew match with Lamentations and BX. Nice. Yeah, Linky in the old YouTube switcheroo. Yep, all that stuff. Oh, great. Tank Pow says working on a shareable house rule document. Awesome. Where did my picture go? There's my picture. Let's flop that over. Okay. So reset the room. I was just kind of basically resetting the recap. So the interview with Silver Axe author Jacob Fleming is tomorrow. I'll have to reset that up. Not a huge deal, but sorry that it went alive in a bunch of places I'm going to have to fix. That was that. So the party decided at the end of the last session, okay, we're going to go continue on. We're not going to try to go back. We're not going to try to shortcut over the hills and do that. We're going to keep going on our mission. Thank you, they're excited for the interview. Yeah, I am too. I am excited. So if you have watched the series, the Silver Axe videos that I've just finished streaming, and you have questions or you just want to hear, interested, yeah, definitely. I figure my schedule may change fairly drastically next week as my job switches over. So I reached out to him and said, hey, I found this issue on the one page where part of the room description was cut off. And then 2, would you like to come on the channel and have an interview? And he was like, oh yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to. And I just threw at him a couple of days this week because I don't know what next week's going to be like or after that. And he was nice enough to say, oh yeah, I can do it. Thursday's great. So yeah, we set it up. So definitely come back Thursday, tomorrow, that is, for that. And this might make my audio of this a little bit fluky. So sorry if you're listening to this on Spreaker, on audio. You're going to get some extra oopsies on there. But it's also going out live. So this is what happens. This is live. This is live, everybody. This is live. And I'm doing this all myself. So I have nobody manning any kind of control interface to help me out. One of the things I wanted to do, and I think I talked about this in the last chat, was this. I really like the idea of curses, and not just curses, but these ways in which words have power. So you already know with magic, especially if you're not playing with kind of the fancier, I don't want to say fancier, but more complex rules of some magic being just gestures and some magic being just reagents. I always think of magic as speaking. You are casting spells. You are speaking them with your mouth. And of course, being spells, those words have power. But there are other words that have power too. And I thought of curses, and not just curse as a word for a spell. Like you might think, oh, this hag cursed you, but they're really doing is casting a spell. Curses in the sense of Lord of the Rings, the Oath Breakers, right? Where they were sort of cursed. They broke their oaths. And I think also they were cursed and that they wouldn't be able to find peace until they had served the King of Gondor, right? So they were stuck. And curses show up a lot, I think, in myths and tales, right? Someone does something usually bad, but I think there are certainly cases where somebody good has been cursed by someone evil, and that those words, you know, have power. And also, you know, how oaths and these other things have power. If you swear an oath, it's not just a role-playing thing, it has power. So I wanted to introduce this into my game. And so I wrote up this little bit that I will read in a minute, that is basically this person's curse. And Daniel Strand says they're running Shadow of Tower Silveraxe on Sunday. Awesome. Well, I just went through the whole thing, Daniel. Not sure how much of those streams you've caught up, and there's probably 5 or 6 hours of me going through the module. And yeah, I'll be talking to the author tomorrow. Tank Powell says like Ravenloft kind of curses. Yeah. And Jack Hole says, always think of curses via Jack Vance, a la Kugel the Clever. Yeah, they definitely come up in lots of different things. Hey, nothing. One of the things I don't like about most RPGs is that everything was reduced to a spell, curses, raise dead, etc. Right. So, and what I like about the idea of curses and oaths, you don't have to be a special person. Right. This could be something that if you've got the ye old murder hobo party and they kick a beggar in the street, that beggar could curse them, and that curse could have real power. It's not derived necessarily from the power of the cursor, the person who curses, or the creature who curses. And you can tie that in if you have, you know, I think this is really, you can really get into the depth of, you know, a lot of times you think of gods in games, they don't actually do a whole lot. I mean, you know, they're usually kind of not day to day. They're sort of far out there, and a lot of time, most times they're passive. You know, the clerics play to them and get their spells, and maybe they get a dream, but they're kind of back there. But curses and oaths and all these things can be ways in which these deities are present. God hears the curse from this beggar to the fighter who kicked them, and the party bard or thief who chuckled, and the magic user that just turned up their nose at them, right? And something comes of that curse. And we kind of workshopped a little bit what that might be. Let's see. Dana Strauss says, when will the talk with the author be live? It'll be live this time tomorrow. So we're 1 p.m. That'll be 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern time. I will re-put the event up there since I goofed on this one today. Even after I knew I had to be careful to click on the correct event, I still goofed it. But it'll be tomorrow at the same time. Check the community tab. I will update it with the correct stream URL, and we'll be good to go. So there's all that. So I'll read this curse here, and I'll be curious, you guys, reading it, what you guys think in terms of, I didn't want it to just say what exactly the curse is, but I did want it to be to give them some idea, because I want them to sort of experience some of when the curse kind of presents itself. I don't want them to know right away what it is. I want it to be that kind of interesting discovery in a sense. So there is some narrative in here because I posted this after the game, and they had already made their decision basically to leave, but I wanted to have this moment hit them before they left. I also wanted them to have some time to think about it before tonight's game. So if I'd been thinking ahead of time, I could have had this prepped for the end of the game session itself. I didn't, but I didn't want to leave it until tonight because I didn't want to spend, I mean, we might still spend we don't have long sessions. We might spend a good of time on this tonight anyway, as they want to suss it out, talk about it, whatever. But I thought at least I can get this in their brains, maybe get their wheels turning a little bit about it before tonight. So here is the text. Before you turn to leave the glade, the man and the ruined shrine, you watch as he speaks a word over the lid of the sarcophagus and then pulls a sword from the dirt. The blade looks aged and webbed with veins of patina. The man looks at you, or perhaps through you or past you. He holds the sword up high over its head. Or I guess that should be his head. A glint of the mid-morning sun is caught for a moment in its steel. He then plunges it into the ground before the shrine. You think you feel a small tremor from the impact, though perhaps it is just an illusion of the moment. In a deep voice, he sings, "Defilers, bringers of ruin, sowers of pollution. The fruits of your greed shall rot in its field. Ash shall be its meat, and fertile bone its seed. Impotent your avarice be until deed is paid with deed." The words seem to crawl over you. You feel a dreadful power in his song, though you can't be sure why. Without another word he leaves, his horse following somberly behind. So that is that. And as far as Daniel Stroud, yep, it'll be recorded. So the stream tomorrow, like all these things, will be recorded. So if you miss anything, just catch up on the old tubes or wherever fine streams and videos may be found. So that's the curse. And the idea here that we kind of workshopped was that some portion of their gold and their loot will essentially kind of become worthless. And I'm still kind of thinking about visually what that's going to look like. But I tried to bring up as many kind of images, right? You know, I was working off that, so you reap what you sow, right? And in this case, they're through their greed. And again, and the idea here is this guy doesn't know that they did it. They just happen to be the only people here. And so he's just kind of looking at them. And I tried to be, I don't know if cagey, but I tried to leave it open-ended. Is he looking at them? Is he looking just kind of through them? Is he looking just in that general direction? But this is written from their point of view. So I think, all right, so I would think, having known that I had done this and known this guy's mad at someone who did this, and I'm the one who did this, I might feel like when he's turning this, that he's turning it and putting it, you know, to me, even if he doesn't know. And the same thing, like I wanted the words, they could feel that this curse was really touching them, or in this case, this song that he sings is touching them. The guy doesn't necessarily know. In fact, I don't think he does know. He's saying this curse to go out into the world and find whoever's done this thing. Just so happens that the people who have done it are right here. But the song, this curse, does know that they did it, and so it really touches them. And it was funny because in the comments from the players, some of the players were commenting a few things. One of them was quick to say, like, I didn't do it, which will be interesting because one of them was sort of away when part of it happened. He's not totally blameless because once the what am I trying to say? Once it became clear that this thing was dying, if I remember correctly, he was as interested as the other guys in trying to get the loot of whatever's left, right? Trying to figure out, oh, now that we've done this, and well, we've kind of screwed the pooch on this anyway. Let's go ahead and loot this sarcophagus or see what kind of loot we can get out of it before we go, right? So he might try to play that, well, I didn't start the fire kind of thing. It's like, no, but he was just as he fanned the flames. He didn't really do anything to stop it. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out. And I think there's this other element, which is they're a group, they're a unit. And if he kind of turns on them now, maybe that will have its own consequence, right? You have these kind of bonds that these guys have put together, and now you're going to break it to try to get out of the curse. In a sense, that's sort of a little bit cowardly, right? A little bit, this thing happened, and instead of kind of standing tall with your brothers, you're trying to shrink away from it, kind of the easy way out. And so I feel like that might be another consequence, depending on how far that he goes with that. This idea of, I'm not guilty, I didn't do it, kind of thing. That could have some interesting ramifications as well. I don't know where it's going to go from here, but should be kind of fun and exciting. Jackal says, well, you have the curse effect. The whole party just wanted to do the deed because not all of them were complicit. Well, there's kind of two things to it, right? One of them started the whole thing, picked the leaf from the plant, and started it kind of dying because the idea was you just had to leave it alone. It just need to be left alone. But he messed with it, They could have touched it, and I think they did touch it, but literally trying to pull a piece off of it started the collapse. Once that started, they all kind of got in the act of, well, we didn't all do it, but if we can all benefit from it. So them all trying to get the lid off the sarcophagus and grab that kind of coffin out and try to search through the coffin to see if anything good could be had of it. And they took some rings off the corpse. I think each one has one of the rings. So the corpse I just rolled randomly had 3 rings on it, and each one of them I think has one of the rings. So that's another interesting thing. Without this curse, they've already cast kind of a detect magic type spell on them, and they weren't magic rings. But I'm wondering if the curse now will. Gosh, this makes me. I didn't even think about that before. I'll have to write this down. That the curse might do something with the rings. Curse effects. They're looted. So I'm just going to put a note there. So, right, there's the initial deed, and then there's everything after it. It would be like maybe one of them. I don't, and I'm not a lawyer, right? But it's kind of, you have the murder, and I guess you have the accessories to the murder. I don't know. At some point, you say, right, if a prosecutor could say, like, you didn't commit the murder, but you helped do everything afterwards, and you didn't turn the guy in or anything, so you're complicit in it, and we could charge you with murder too, or I don't know, right? I feel like with these curses and things, it doesn't have to be to the letter of our modern law with all kinds of ifs or buts or whatever. It's like, no, you were in on it, right? You didn't stop to limit the sort of the evil or the bad act that came out of it. You went with it. Tank Palace's accessory after the fact, right? Something of that nature. And I don't think the curse needs to be super specific. You were part of the gang who did it, and maybe you didn't pull the leaf, but once that first step was done, you were happy to profit if you could have. I mean, and they did profit. They did get those rings. You were happy to profit off of it. So I think you're probably going down the river with your buddies. Darren says, curse adjacent. Yeah, so I think they're all in it, but it is going to be interesting, like I said, if this really turns into a tension within the group. It could be some fun, because one of them was clearly responsible for the initial deed. Really, only one of them did the initial plucking, right? The other ones didn't really want to, but the first one did it. But then the other 2 were like, okay, well, now we're all here and it's happening, so let's get what we can get. So I'm ready for some interesting things to come out of it, and we'll see. I think these are the kind of moments that say a lot about them as of their characters as people. Do you stand with your your sort of your adopted brother in this, or do you sell them, down the river at the first opportunity, even though you should feel some guilt also about what you did? They didn't do it, the initial deed, but they're not innocent. They're not guiltless. They're not free of wrongdoing. So how do they approach whatever happens? Could be fun. Jack Cole says, what if the curse makes it to where whoever they try to sell the rings to swears is theirs and was stolen? Therefore, their ill-gotten gains are worthless. That could be. That's definitely an option. I'm trying to think. I'm thinking now that maybe the rings will end up on their fingers. I think the next time they check, 'cause I don't think they're wearing the rings. I think they just each one took possession of one of them. But I think now that the rings, they're not going to be able. They're going to be on their fingers, and they're not going to be able to take them off. And that'll be kind of fun to play with also. And maybe the rings will speak to people. Certainly, if that character comes around again and shows up and sees those rings on their fingers, that could also be interesting. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff. To be had. In some ways, I kind of wish they would go back to town, because a lot of this stuff's gonna impact them more when they're back in society than when they're out in the wilderness. Let's see. Terrence says, make 2 of the rings good effects and 1 bad effect, but to get the bad one off, they have to destroy the good ones. That's another one. That's another one. Yeah, you guys are coming up with a lot of good stuff. Yeah, I'm not sure. I gotta think more. It was just funny because they had the rings, they tested the rings came back just kind of normal but nice, but each one decided to just take one. Well, they had one, and then they split them up because it was 3 people, 3 rings evenly. But But now I'm definitely thinking, yeah, I gotta bring those rings into this somehow. And the rings are all from the corpse that was in that shrine. So it makes total sense that there would be some kind of effect. I got some time though, because I'm thinking I could probably combine a bunch of things. So I think one outward effect will be that they, can I add more stuff in here? One outward effect will be that they can't take the rings off. There we go. That will maybe be effect number one that they're likely to notice. Let's see. Rings become worn, can't be removed. And then we'll come up with add more stuff as we're talking about it. So this rings will be a longer game, right? But the rings are going to be, it'll be something that's nice too, now that I'm thinking about it. Because I mentioned before, I don't know if it was one of my videos or talking about something else, that having sort of props for things is good. I think when we might have been talking about undead, or like it was, I think it was some kind of, I'm trying to remember, some kind of encounter with undead, and or maybe the undead were cursed. It might have been when one of them in the Bandits Keep, the Bandits Keep chat about undead, and I think I mentioned in there how, you know, maybe these undead are sort of free roaming because, or someone else mentioned it was a good idea. There was a curse or something else was happening, which was causing these undead to kind of roam around the wilderness, or just of your normal undead that usually we think of skeletons and zombies, right? Cemeteries and crypts and things like that. So if you're just going through the woods and suddenly there's a band of undead there, it's going to seem weird and maybe think, oh, the reason's a curse. And I think I mentioned something like giving the curse a prop. Like it could be manacles on the hands, or sort of an iron leash, or an iron whatever you call it, around their neck, iron bands around their neck, so with runes on it or something. These signifiers that something weird, right, is going on, and it signifies that there's more than meets the eye. They're not just zombies; they're zombies now with these iron bands around their necks, maybe with some kind of symbology on there. It speaks to, okay, this is not normal. It almost gives a little bit of itself. It gives that reason for why aren't these undead in what we would consider an undead environment. Like, why are they out here just in these woods? Oh, they all have these kind of iron bands. Nothing else seems alike of them, but they all have these iron bands. That doesn't tell us exactly why. You can already imagine now that maybe there's something controlling them through the bands. And you can even add, if you want to add some active kind of magical stuff, maybe the bands glow a certain color, or the runes, you know, or the band is extremely cold, or it's a little bit hot, right? So after the battle, when they're examining these things, it gives them some clues. Okay, this is some means of control. And as a symbol, the idea of having a collar, that's the word I couldn't think of before, a collar that signifies that you are not under your own control, right? Something else is controlling you, either by a physical leash or perhaps by some other type of leash. Use that to help describe what's happening, because with some effects like a curse, players may not have a means of discovering what that is. They don't have you could use a detect magic kind of thing if they've got it, presumably, but maybe the curse isn't exactly magical. Maybe you don't want it to be exactly magical, but you want to be able to let the party figure out something about it, because that helps make sense of things. If we assume we're not playing in a super gonzo setting where anything can show up at any moment, we want to make sense. So in this case, having as a prop, these rings become a prop of the curse. And the rings are great because they are literally proof of the misdeeds. These guys would not have these rings if they did not defile and despoil the shrine. So it is literally proof of their guilt. And so that they're going to have these. And again, I don't know why I didn't even think about this before, but they have these rings, and each one has one, which is just, for my purposes, absolutely perfect. So now this curse is on them. And now next time in the game, they start to think about the rings, or maybe I'll just roll randomly to see when they look at their hands, notice that the rings are on their fingers. And then when they try to remove them, they're not going to be able to. it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's definitely going to put a little bit of the fear more into them, because I think they're going to feel that connection to the curse. They know where those rings came from, and now they know this curse has happened, and it's kind of like things are kind of putting together, and that noose is sort of tightening around their necks a little bit. And I did try to put in the song this idea that you can fix it, right? You're not going to be able to get out of this thing until you do something to the equal on the positive side of the ledger as the negative thing you've done on the other side of the ledger. Now, I don't know what that would be. I don't have something set up for them. Perhaps if they go and, I've mentioned before, but right, I'm setting them up to run through the Caves of Chaos as listed here on this page from Keep on the Borderlands, right? So that is something that not just their original mission was to kind of get out the wolf people, and maybe that's not enough, but if they actually prevent the conspiracy that's happening here, that could be enough, right? That might be the good deed, or they don't get that far and they'll have to do something else. Jackal says the rings could be symbols of office with implied duties in town. Maybe the thing is this shrine. I kind of said, I mean, it could be anything, right? But I feel like there's not much of a connection between this place and the town, at least not in its present state. So it would have to be something from the distant past, which I could do. It's not like they have the whole history of the town in front of them. It could be meaningful on some level. I kind of want to think it's only a few people who are going to get the significance. Certainly this guy that they met who actually sung the curse would understand the rings and kind of what they mean. And maybe there'll be some other folk. I don't know if I just want to be kind of everybody, but it'll definitely be interesting which folk I think about might have this knowledge, and then what they do with it. A lot of fun intrigue could be had. Tank Pal says symbols on the ring could be from an ancient, long thought dead faction of some sort. Yes. So the guy who I call the Sword Verdigris right now, and I'm not sure if that's him or some kind of rank or title, is part of a clan, family, tribe, a small kind of hidden society that still has knowledge of the old destroyed culture that used to live here. And my idea was that he was on his way sort of to pay some respects at the shrine, to venerate the shrine. And he's on his way there, which he does periodically. It might even help is why the power of the shrine is always renewed. Sort of like the idea of, like in Coco, and I don't know if this is true in sort of Mexican beliefs, but the idea of, that you're in the movie Coco, how your ancestors are alive in the underworld as long as they're kind of people who uphold their memory. So in a way, doing these pilgrimages to the shrine, they don't have the manpower at this point, the strength to try to pull back this whole area. But this one place they've kept. The other shrine that was on the other side that now has that acid elemental in there, that one's been lost. But this one has still been maintained, maybe in part because it has that. The other one was a well, and this one had that sarcophagus. It was a burial site as well. Maybe that helps. And then the fact that these people would come periodically and that they maintain the memory of it and keep it alive helps give the place that power, right? That without them, maybe it would have succumbed to whatever destruction or just decay or rot. And part of why it hadn't was that these people would come and venerate it. And now it's gone. So I hadn't decided whether this guy was the last of his kind sort of thing, or whether he's one of some number. I don't even know where they live yet. And by the way, this is something I like so much about it. Doesn't really, I was going to say sandbox. It has nothing to do with being a sandbox. I like keeping my maps open, and I don't mean not filling them out, because I'll often just use some kind of random generator and generate a whole bunch of terrain, and then I'll zoom in on it and find a place that looks nice, and I'll just start working in there, and then I can just keep zooming out as needed and alter the terrain if I decide. Something like Worldographer, which I like because you can generate essentially a whole planet really fast. You get some weird stuff, there's this forest that goes right up to an active volcano. I mean, you have these weird things. So you often have to go in and clean it up. But I like to use those to give me a sense of the scale, a sense of the area, a lot of potential terrain, and I'll pick through and find a selection that I like. And once I find a selection I like, I'll go in and fine tune it. But what I meant by keeping my map open was I haven't defined a whole lot. I leave these areas that are either very fuzzily defined or not at all defined, and then I just can kind of fill them in as I need to, kind of as things are progressing. So this person was a just a simple, in a sense, a simple NPC. Under different circumstances, might have been somebody completely different on completely different business. But as everyone else does, I'm listening to podcasts and I'm watching movies and I'm watching TV, right? And these different ideas, I'm interfacing with you guys in the chats on these streams. I'm reading through modules, and so different ideas come to me. So it went from, I want to kind of throw somebody in here. I'd just been paying the podcast on Lord of the Rings, just talking about Tom Bombadil, talking about different things. Oh, that'd be kind of a fun character, right? But then Tom Bombadil kind of he lives there and he has a purpose there. And this place, I just didn't think someone would be living here, or I'd have to really explain why this person's living here. Now, granted, they have the powers of Tom Bombadil. They could do it. I didn't want it to be like that. I wanted it to be a little bit different. So I kind of had this idea of the shrine, and I did like the fact that the players goofed up on the shrine, and there's a consequence for that. A couple of them. One is, now they know that it would have been a safe space for them. That's now gone. And now two, they've got this guy who they don't know if the guy likes them or hates them, but they do know that if this person knew what they had done, he would be their enemy. So, it takes an interesting element. And now I get to think about, well, who are his people? And I get ideas in my brain, okay, from somewhere else, but what's their connection to the shrine? Right. So I get to fill all these things in. And I'm just going to say, if I had to fill it all in at once, I wouldn't have had as good ideas as being able to fill it in piecemeal. So, that's kind of I feel like a benefit of just keeping things kind of loose and fuzzy on the edges. Tank Pal says, I really enjoy mapping that way too. Yeah, I just don't get, as far as mapping goes, I don't get a lot of inspiration of what a whole map could look like. For me, it's easier for me to take an area that looks interesting, clean up some of the anomalies, though sometimes the anomalies can introduce interesting ideas too. Clean that stuff up and then think of what's inside. It just works better for me. Jackal says, I could go dark and use some kind of Aztec religion aspects, human sacrifice to power the gods sort of thing. Absolutely. I think that's what's going to be maybe on the other side. So we also have, right, if this sword verdigris represents sort of a good side, at least to some degree, what's going on with the kind of Ill-Earth Stone and the Cave of Chaos is definitely going to be dark. Though I want to keep open. So one thing I like about Keep on the Borderlands and the Caves of Chaos is it's very open to different approaches by the players. And I don't want to make it totally that these folks are just enemies and they're just going to kill or be killed or capture to be killed. So especially these opening parts of the caves, and I'll flash the map if you recall. See that? Opening parts of the caves have all those different cave entrances, and they have different creatures are in the different caves. And I think here, these two I marked on this kind of I forget, it's not a mind map specifically, they call it something else, but flowchart or something, I don't know. Anyway, these are entrances A or D. A has kobolds in it, D has goblins in it, and there are, I think, multiple levels of caves with different folk. And I definitely want to keep that, and I definitely want to keep these creatures accessible to them so that they can use their social skills and potentially have interactions that just don't involve evil cultists that just are looking to kill them. But the stuff towards the end, once they're sort of in it more and at sort of, if they get to the heart of it, will definitely have that vibe. If they get to where the really bad stuff is happening, if they get to the kind of Ill-Earth Stone itself, that will certainly have some of the element. Tank Pal says they're working on a conversion document for the Barbarians of Lemuria magic system inspired by my live stream. That works well with the Aztec idea too. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I like that a lot. I definitely feel like I will use that when I need to figure out what sort of bad guys are doing. Bad guy magicians and sorcerers and things like that. And I don't want to write a spell for it. I mean, I know as a GM I can hand wave it, but I kind of like having the mechanics for those things. I feel like it just makes it a little bit more fair. I'm just not, oh, I'm just giving them whatever. And it gives me ideas for limitations and sort of how they need to power it. How are they going to power it? What do they need to do? All that stuff that just becomes plot hooks for the party if they can discover these things. So I like giving those kind of limitations as opposed to just saying, well, I'm the GM and they're an NPC, so I can do whatever I want. I mean, sure, I can. But putting those limitations in place, saying, okay, I got to play by a set of rules, and it's rules that I created, right? Or borrowing, and I can adjust as needed. I think that just is helpful. But I'd love to see a conversion document. I can't say I haven't thought about doing it myself, but I'm always willing to hop on somebody else's work if it saves me from having to do the work. So I definitely want them to be able to, and I'm kind of setting this up like this image here, or this, I don't know, whatever they call it, flow chart, blah, 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 mind map-y looking thing. Because I'm trying to keep this abstract. I have the actual map. I mean, I have the PDF, and obviously I have the book, so I don't need that. And I have the room descriptions, which I might not use precisely. Certainly, I will use them to kind of look at and sort of take notes off of. But I'm more trying to think about the I don't want to say higher level, but the kind of motivational things. I think, so I guess I'll just write some notes in here. I think that what they're going to know, also kind of what they know and what they don't know. Let's see, back to Magic 10 classes. I think that gives a magic more personal flair, making it more yours as a GM. Absolutely. Yeah. Totally does. Totally does. So one thing, I'll make another note here on this, and somewhat I'll share some of these documents once I've kind of gone through this area, and they'll evolve as needed. So I think I'm calling it the call as to what they've heard. Let's see. That's the one thing with this. It's not really this. I'm really liking this Miro. It is kind of limited in how much stuff you can have. I think I can only have, whoops, no. That's kind of cool. I like that, but I don't want it. I wanted to drag this out. There we go. Whoa. Oh, and one letter didn't get bolded. I like the this idea that they don't all know what's happened to them, right? That these creatures have been pulled in. These ultimately, I think what I'm calling the court of decay has been pulling these creatures in. Oh, this app, this one is there. This is Miro. It is the version I'm using is just online, web-based, which is fine for now. I believe they do have an app, so I could pull it. I could pull it in an app at some point, but right now it's just online. So these creatures have all been they've all been summoned by what I'm just calling the call. Oh, that's interesting. I thought it might just increase the size of the box. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. I'm learning. Look at that. You get to see me, watch me learn how to. No, how does that work? Do I have to pull on that? No. Interesting. I guess you can't. I guess the only way you can increase the size of the boxes vertically without kind of stretching them is to just type. Okay. So the kind of the first thing, these initial creatures, which will actually be most of the creatures in here, is, and I think it's similar to how it works in the vanilla Caves of Chaos. I haven't gone back and read through it exactly right, but they're kind of there, sort of they feel the pull, but they don't necessarily know of what, which is why they're willing to work with the party on various things, or use the party as tools to gain dominance over their fellow denizens. It's because they're not really united by a common cause. They've just been sort of pulled here. So this is a similar thing, right? So the creatures have all been pulled. You could also call it, attracted. Maybe drawn would be another word. Right? They've been pulled here. They haven't been given anything to do yet. No stronger command or stronger power has been put to them yet. Right now, it's just gathering everybody together. Maybe we're getting back to kind of, if there's it needs to be kind of that sort of sacrifice of blood. I make my notes all over the place, so maybe some sort of sacrifice is needed to power stone to further. I gotta move this because it's maybe some sort of sacrifice is needed to power the stone to further. I want to say further powers again. Power further. So need to power stronger stone abilities. And I haven't, or maybe it's whoops, no, can I move? No, I want to move you. No. How can I move you? No, how do I move you now? No, I just want to move you. Can I control? Shift? Alt? All right. How do I move you now? Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. I'm just going to pull this down. So maybe there needs to be something like that. I don't know if I like that because the Iller Stone, in my conception from the book, and I think I read the Wikipedia entry on it. I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly like the Iller Stone in the Stephen R. Donaldson book. That's just my inspiration. That was pretty powerful already. I have introduced the concept of them. They don't know it yet, but cutting bits of the stone off and sort of imbuing or sort of cursing or sort of transforming creatures with it. That's how the elemental went nutso. That's also how the giant amphibioid got sort of created or perverted. Jackal says, would destroying the evil shrine satisfy the deed for deed clause of the curse? If so, that would be a common cause. Maybe if they thought of it, if they thought about it and went and took that fight to the other shrine, maybe. The only reason why I might not think, why I might say no, is that what they did. So on the one hand, you say, hey, look, shrine for shrine, right? You destroyed this shrine. I destroyed the other shrine, right? Aren't we all good? But it's not really. So if I'm understanding Jackal correctly, he's talking about the other shrine that's got that elemental in it. That's not really a shrine of the evil folks. That's a ruined shrine. But if you're talking about the shrine in the Caves of Chaos where the really nasty stuff with the Illerstone would be, yes, I would say that. Because I look at it like they ruined. Here was this good beacon against this evil force. They destroyed the good beacon, the kind of good side of this equation. Destroy the bad side of the equation, that would definitely fit. So I'd say if they went and destroyed the inner shrine, took care of the Iller Stone as a threat, absolutely, that would. If they just like kick out that elemental from that other ruined shrine, then that would not. But yes, if they take out, i.e., what I mean is, just to make sure we're on the same page, if we're talking about the shrine to evil chaos or the shrine of evil chaos, if they were to fix that, then yes, that would definitely work. Jackal says they meant that. Yeah, sorry, Jackal. I got your drift as I started talking. Yes, this evil shrine in the caves. Yes, if they do that, I think that would satisfy it, right? Though they'll have to sort of dig into things to figure that out, because it's not the reason why they came. And they're fairly inquisitive, and I hope that they will attempt to reason with creatures or speak with them or try to figure out the lay of the land. if we recall, their original raison d'etre, their reason for being there, is to find these two sort of wolf people, or really the chief wolf person. But there's two of them that are there. Find the chief wolf person, bring them out. That's their initial mission. And then, if they're inquisitive and they ask, they will get sort of clues to this other deeper, darker thing going on. I don't know. I'll have to just, it really will be something sort of played by ear. What the wolf people may know of it, what they've heard, because people aren't going to tell them because they're prisoners. What they may have heard, what they may know, and really how inquisitive the players are to dealing with that. It might be something that they'll end up, if they can do their initial case, maybe they'll even have to come back. It could be that too. They don't have to get it all in one go round. Jackal says with the curse, without profiting from it. That's a good question. Given that they'll have to get all the way to the end, and I think the curse is going to affect their stuff as they're getting it. I think I won't necessarily have to deal with that issue, because I think the curse will make itself manifest and be affecting them before they get to the shrine. So, but that is a good question. If they were to leave before returning, that might be interesting too. But I think I'm going to try to, well, I'm not going to try to, but I'm going to hope that situations will present themselves in which I can describe the curse taking effect long before they get to that evil shrine. So hopefully that won't be an issue that would be, but that would be interesting. Where this might come up is if we're talking about, let's say they get to the shrine, they dispatch the people holding the shrine. Now they've got the Iller stone. Kind of what do they do with it, right? If they take it with the, if they take it to figure out how to destroy it, that's one thing. If they take it with the purpose of trying to turn it into profit, then that would change things, right? So if they destroy the shrine and destroy it for the sake of destroying it, destroy the stone, or throw the stone into a bottomless chasm or something else, right? Put it back in the earth from whence it came. That's one thing. If they say, ooh, there's this green shiny magic stone and we're going to take it home and fill it and do things, then that would kind of change. That would change the equation, and also make for an interesting situation. Once, hopefully they would see kind of what that stone's about. And if they still decide, yeah, let's take it with us, we can totally turn this to our advantage without it taking over or destroying us, then yeah, totally. All right, so I did like the idea of the arrows. Is this an arrow? Yeah, look at that. Okay, can I double arrow it? No, that just changes that. No, that changes that. Oh, you know what? Let's do that. Whoa, look at that. I do like these arrows. I am kind of digging these apps where you can do all these visualizations. There we go. So that's the state of things. Obviously, I have not filled in. I put A and D on here because those are the closest caves to the entrance. I think this map could be done a little bit. I have the PDF somewhere. But there's a lot going on in the map. It's got all the rooms. It's got the shaded for the elevations. But yeah, as far as the ground floor, ground level, there are 4 entrances. There's also G. Let's see. Do I just have to make another box? Maybe is that the box? Sticky note, shape. There's also G. And then E. Whoops. Oh, did I not? I don't think I tied this. I should probably change those. These are all the ground floor rooms, or entrances. These are the ground floor entrances. My cat is wheezing in the background. What's going on? Why can't I? Do I have to go to this? Is that it now? Maybe that is it. Okay. Those are all the ground floor. Maybe I should color these all pink for ground floor. Maybe I'll do yellow. Maybe that's better. So these are the ones I assume they're going to interact with first. I can't imagine that they'll forego these to climb up over them to some of these other, though I suppose people must. I imagine there have been parties that have decided to try to go in from one of the high ground. So I shouldn't totally say that they will not, they will never decide not to go into those other caves. But I have a feeling they're going to get into one of these. So in my universe, all the different kind of goblinoid, elven, kind of fey creatures are all of a similar type. And it's really about how they manifest themselves that kind of determines what they are, what their appearance and everything looks like. So kobolds are more about, and I'm using sort of dog-faced, it's kind of dog-ish kobolds, kind of exploration and mischief. Goblins are more, I guess kobolds are more, exploration, really more. Goblins are really the more mischievous. I guess they kind of both have a mischievous element, but the goblins are more, I guess, sinister. I don't know if sinister is maybe not the right word. I guess it kind of is. I don't know. Hard to find the word sometimes, but maybe more mean-spirited. If you can think about sort of pranks versus, I don't know, what would the other word be? Pranks versus, what's a mean version of a prank? I don't know. Something but that nature. So they kind of have, this is where they get their character, where they kind of get their look from. So I'm using all the stats. Their stats are basically the same as they would be in normal BX. I'm not really tweaking the stats so much, but in terms of sort of what they represent in the game, they're not really different species so much as you have this sort of, and I don't even know what you would call it. It's almost like they're all like bacteria, right? Where you have all these bacteria and they're all bacteria, but there's like a million different kinds of bacteria. It's kind of the same thing. It's like these kind of I do sort of fall into sort of the elder kind of thing, but it's not in the same way as they are kind of firstborn, but they're in some ways they're also, there's a primitive element to them. A primitive in the way that they are really sort of unbound, but also kind of unchained to things, partly because they're not from the prime material plane. They're more kind of fluid, and they're just fundamentally different. They're somewhat primitive, but kind of pure, right? They're these pure expressions of emotion, but in kind of a primitive way. And then they're also tied into these different aspects, and kind of they can be both good or bad. I think I mentioned last time that the sort of classic elf, Tank Pal says prank versus bully. Fluffy the Griffin also says maliciousness, and then nothing also says bullying. Yeah, something like that, right? Goblins definitely more bullying, kobolds more mischievous. That's actually a good way to think of it. So you take these sort of very pure, concentrated, but also sort of primitive, just emotions, and the way they sort of imprint and into a form, and also the very there's an elemental touch to it too. So also with sort of wilderness things, kind of sets these different forms. So you have these, what will be your classic elven beauty, is one that's all about love, but love in a way that isn't necessarily positive. It can be the love that demands complete devotion all the time. The love that demands, a singular, overwhelming, obedience, right? orcs, that kind of power and sort of violence and that love of battle and the kind of warlike emotion that comes from them. You know, kobolds, they're constantly searching out, they're constantly exploring things, whether it's their tinkering or the fact that they are often, in fact, the party has encountered a group of kobolds once before, very early on, also looking through the dungeon that they were looking at. Jackal says, elves equal high maintenance partner. Yeah, exactly. Extremely high maintenance. You know, they don't have to be. They can be loving, but there's always these things. There's kind of those two sides of the same coin, right? The kind of exploration and wanting to discover things that for kobolds also translates into this could be a very zealous ownership of these things. And that's where I was trying to pull in the idea of kobolds as these sort of trappers, trap makers, and creating all these different things, is that they come in and sort of lay claim to things. They find these old places, try to essentially loot them, and then, you know, make it so that nobody else can come in. It's like, this was ours to see and sort of ours alone, right? Whereas sort of the goblins and the orcs for sure have some orcs very much on the conquest, but the goblins, as a sign of bullies, also like to have sort of dominion over things. And I try to explain that's kind of why those creatures kind of work well together, because they do have similar goals, and the goblins are somewhat happy to subsume their stuff to the orcs. Orcs have these sort of grandiose, you know, these really, you know, if you think of war, right, versus bullying, right? A war doesn't have to be bullying, but oftentimes you might want to, especially if you're not a nice person, you might think that bullies could help you with stuff you do in a war, and that sort of violence of battle and the exaltation of battle. And there's some of that in bullies. So they work together. So that's my reasoning anyway. I'm sure it's imperfect, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to work for me. Which is so far, though my players have very limited experience with elves. In fact, one of them was raised somewhat by elves, but was also shielded from a lot of this. And I've tried to make, you know, that they know some things, but they weren't an elf. They weren't fae. They were human. Jackal says, what are bugbears? Brutality. Yep, exactly. Yep, you've got it. Bugbears, just all about that. Yeah. Right. These different elements of kind of, you know, if you can break out kind of the different sort of emotional states of violence and conflict. You know, you got sort of battle, sort of bullying as sort of a way of exerting sort of control, not necessarily through fighting. Often it might be through the you know, the threat of it, and then just not even really caring about if the orcs imagine some kind of what a wonder it must be to be like Alexander the Great and conquer half the world. The bugbears just want to, you know, beat stuff up, right? They just want to go in there and you know, lay waste for that part of it. So in the Elven world, you have these different courts, and the courts are made up of all these different types. Usually, the sort of the sort of I don't know, high elf style elves tend to at least be the figureheads, whether they're really in control or not, simply because they make wonderful figureheads, right? Like your kings and queens that people look up to and think, oh, how beautiful, and aren't they? Look at that, you know, our wonderful queen and our king, and they're so wonderful, and we love them, even though maybe that's all they are. Some of them do exert real control. Others of them only the illusion of control, and that some of these other things, it might be, you know, a general, an orc general who's running things, or a cabal of generals who are running things behind the scenes. But you know, the courts are kind of made up of this whole thing. Now, the one player whose character lived in that world, lived in a sort of a sheltered version of that world that was deliberate by his foster elves because they don't want to show all of it. They don't want, it's not that they necessarily keep it secret. It's kind of like it's not for these other folks to understand. I think there is a bit, which you get, I guess, a little bit in things like Lord of the Rings, of the, I don't want to say arrogance, but this idea of like, you can't get it. You know, we're alive. We're doing this stuff for millennia. You guys are only here for a blink of an eye kind of thing. You just don't, you know, it's kind of beyond your control. But I think there's this also element of, it gives you power, somewhat power to understand these things, to know these things. So it's not something that's well known through the multiverse that this is how it works. But if you're interested in it and you dig enough into it, and you know, you get into it, you would figure that out. Tank says, do I have deities in the world? Yes, I do. Multiple. The one that I do have one sort of monotheistic style deity, which is the one that's popular amongst the humans, and all the characters except for one. Well, there's only 3. One dwarf character. His original partner was a cleric of this church, this kind of monotheistic style tradition. It's not Christianity, but it does have some similar things, but they just, you know, pretty much just a one God sort of religion, as opposed to, say, you know, we worship a pantheon, but there is multiple gods. But that's the one that they're involved with. Tank Pal says, like the idea of a cabal of generals. I want to use it. Well, please go ahead, steal it, use it. I couldn't copyright it even if I wanted to. The nice thing with having a cabal is that they get to fall apart at some point. Those things don't last. I mean, maybe they're historical precedents. I always think back to the first, second triumvirates. At the end of the Republic, when Caesar and Pompey, and who was the third? There was a rotation, I think, a few of them, few different iterations, right? We're all trying to sort of keep each other in check and share power, and you know, it never worked for very long. So the nice thing is you have this built-in mechanism to turn the world on its head a bit when this cabal, however successful it is, whatever they're able to do, at some point, one of them is going to want to be the one, right? And so what happens when the cabal comes apart? No, nothing says Crassus. Yeah, I think you're right. Yep, Crassus. That's definitely who I was thinking of. I'm wondering if was there, because I know there were like a few different versions of it, but were they all with the same 3? Was it all Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, or at one point was somebody else and something? But anyway, you get the idea. You can look it up. It's all the sort of backbiting and maneuvering, and you know, it's really fascinating. Let's see. This was a template, by the way. Just in case people are wondering, I didn't set up all these arrows ahead of time, so I don't necessarily have reason for them. They just kind of, when you open up this template, it drops some of the stuff in here, and I only just filled out these 2 rows. So I don't even know if I have real uses for these. It's more to help me visualize kind of, here are the caves, here are the entrances I think they're going to take. And then as I'll go along, I can fill in sort of, I don't really mean these to be physical notes, like, oh, here's the guard room, and then here's the secret passage. It's more for me to fill in kind of what happens here. So tonight, if they were to talk to the kobolds and secure some kind of deal, then I'll write that deal in here. Or I might write, if they get ambushed and half of them killed, kind of those kind of notes. Let's see. Tang Pal says, I also think of cabals of ancient sorcerers in REH work that always collapse. Yep. And Tank Pal says, I love Roman history. Yeah, it's super fascinating. And there's so much about the Roman history that I think is fitting for our times, because we have similar institutions in place to some degree. Obviously, it's very different, but a lot of the same. I feel like we have a lot of the same challenges and forces that are at work, so it feels more present. more of a point crawl, kind of, yeah, like an emotional point crawl, a point crawl of their contextual progress more than their physical progress. I mean, obviously, I'll make notes of where they get to in the caves. If they stop in a room and that's where we end the night, I'll say, okay, they're room 11. But yeah, this is more on their progress with, you can think of these things in some ways, they're kind of different sub factions, right? So here's the overall faction, the kobolds, the goblins, and I got to think about, I mean, maybe you can think about it now, like, what do the kobolds want? They're here from the call, right? They heard the call, but they don't know why they're here. Can I give this a color? Oh, I think I can. Let's see. Can I go red? Oh yeah. Turn down that opacity. There we go. Nice. They've heard the call. They've come, but they don't know why. They don't know the purpose yet. It hasn't been given to them yet. There's just been sort of in some ways, like a little Shangri-La for these kind of creatures right now, in a sense, because they've got a place to stay. It's like, you get to Hotel California and the guy opens the door. Welcome. Your rooms are waiting for you here. Though we might think about, did they take this cave from somebody else? Is the stone trying to draw stronger and stronger creatures and just let them? That's actually an interesting thing. I'm going to have to write that down. So I'm thinking maybe that the stone is just attracting bunches and bunches of creatures. And that this opens some things up, right? Let's see. What's this? I'll make a sticky note or what's that shape? I don't know. Whoa, what did that do? Not auto. Why are you? No. No. I know it's going to make for a riveting audio version. Oh, it turned that into, oh, interesting. I didn't even mean to do that. This idea that it's calling, all it's doing is attracting creatures right now. And maybe it takes longer for stronger creatures come. And it is fine with essentially letting these creatures battle it out, right? It doesn't care. It's not thinking in terms of an army, right? Its philosophy is really just let the strong survive. So at the end, you'll have a bunch of these stronger people, and then if they ever leave, they'll know things will keep pulling towards it. So what this means, though, for me, for the caves, is that creatures want to keep their place. And they thinking that the party is also called, they'll try to push the party, to take on, different sub factions. So if I can make sense of this for myself and for you guys in here, the idea is that, so we have this Illith stone-like thing that has been found and is right now, I wouldn't say being weaponized, but is being manipulated by, or is the stone itself is the manipulator of this particular group. And it is just sending out waves of this kind of energy, right? This sort of, which I'm calling the call. It's come on, it's pushing out, and creatures, these chaotic creatures, are being drawn in. They don't really know why, but they're being drawn into this place. Now it's kind of in a holding pattern. It hasn't decided what it's doing quite yet, or it hasn't decided, sort of hasn't given them another order, but they know that they should be here. And they also know that as these other creatures coming in, it's going to be fighting for spots. Like, this is the amount of, for right now, for until some other decision's been made, you know, this is their domain. So they're fighting over their spots. There's only so many caves in there, and maybe I'll put some, and I could definitely add some in some of this ground level area, perhaps, or this might just be where battles have taken place. So there's only a certain amount of room right now. So if you are the kobolds and you're the goblins, you're these ones that you might have some numbers, but as far as the pecking order, you're at the bottom. You're also at the, makes sense that you were at the bottom of the caves too. If that's kind of a little bit of a, where you rank in the mix is kind of where you are. Then when something stronger comes alive, you know it's going to take a spot, or it's going to attempt to take a spot. It could take the spot from you, or it can take the spot from somebody else. And you're just assuming, because there are barriers to get here, that anything coming here is coming because of the call. That would be, I think that would be a fair assumption that I could see these goblins or the kobolds or some of these other folks making is, if you're here for the call. There's not really any other reason to be here. Unlike in the original Caves of Chaos, you're not even that close. You're not so close to a settlement yet that you would have reason to think that they'd be sending out adventurers your way. You would think, oh, you must have been called. And if you've been called, you're going to need a spot. Either I'm going to fight you, hold on my spot, or I'm going to see if I can get you to go somewhere else and fight over their spot, which is kind of win-win, right? If you're the goblins and these guys go take care of the kobolds, great. If the kobolds take care of them, great. And of course, vice versa if you're a kobold. Jackal says, maybe the stone favors the strongest monster group will manifest its final form in their image, a la Ghostbusters, and each faction wants the honor. Ooh, that's another good one. I can dig it. Right? Gozer takes any shape that she wants. Form manifestation. So does the final form of the stone, did I spell manifestation wrong? Yes, I did. From a quote favored unquote faction. Possible. Yep. Oh, why? I gotta figure out how to. No. How does that work? I still don't know how to. Oh, okay, so that's weird. I got to figure out how to decide when it's going to grab to move it and when it's going to grab and move the whole thing. I got there being some sort of honor maybe coming from being the strongest. I also like the idea of them sort of fighting to keep their spots. So this definitely gives room for the party to maneuver. And I'm definitely interested to see when they get there and it's not super hostile up front. Because they're not going to assume they're hostile, which I think is something that in the original Caves of Chaos, you have to overcome the fact that these creatures, I think they assume that you're coming to the caves, you're not really coming for good, right? They're kind of on their guard. These guys will be on their guard too, right? Because they are just assuming that someone's going to come and figure out that they need to take a spot and then take one. But at the same time, if the party shows a social side, if they show that they can be bargained with, these creatures will bargain with them. Not necessarily in good faith. They might send them into a trap. They might send them and see what happens and then maybe follow up, especially if they go up the cliff. Like if they go up the cliff and one of these other groups that's down at the bottom thinks they can sneak in behind and take that upper spot, which is safer because it's harder to get to. And maybe it's more prestigious, like Jack Cole suggested, that the more prestigious monsters, the monsters that are higher in favor, are the ones that hold higher up on the cliffs. Then, you know, there's a lot of room for the party and the creatures to interact in these ways, in sort of social ways, in making bargains, making some sort of temporary alliances, right? Getting information. If these creatures think that they can give the party some information and that the party will move on, they might do that. Because as I said before, these creatures that are all kind of clustered here, they don't know what's going on. They just know about the call right now and that it feels like they're supposed to be here. So them asking questions and trying to discover stuff isn't necessarily going to put them on super guard. Now, once you get into kind of the inner sanctum areas and the people who are the kind of the cultists and stuff who are, and the court members who are on the know, then that will eventually get exposed. But it'll give them some things to do if they, if they can hold to, right? If they don't just attack the first things or do whatever. It'll be interesting because I know that my players don't tend to just run in and attack things, but we'll see how much they try to wheel and deal. Because like I said, the one thing they do have that could give them, they're going to have to figure out how to handle. Because like I said, they're coming for their initial mission, the one that they are here to do is to rescue these wolf people. If they just go and outwardly start asking, hey, where are the wolf people? That's going to call then they're going to know that it's not the call. Because A, how do they know about wolf people? And B, if you were here for the call, you wouldn't really know about them and you wouldn't care. Those things wouldn't be relevant to you. So if they just go and start asking everybody they meet, hey, where are the wolf people? That's going to blow it. And then we'll have to see what they do from there. Because if they tend to be very earnest, so they tend to be kind of, they play things very open, right? They haven't gotten maybe the hang yet, I want to say, of being very judicious with the knowledge that they will hand out to people for the asking. So this will be a little bit of a test. It's interesting because it was kind of what the original two players I started with, that they wanted a strong sort of faction intrigue play. One of those players left, who was that cleric. One player stayed. He recruited two other players to continue the game. And I'm not sure how much those guys are super aware of that element. I know I brought it up to them in the past. Kind of remember, this is what the game's about, kind of thing. But it'll be interesting to see how they handle it, because a couple other times they've come into play where I felt like that, that I could have said that it was like almost like flying a flag saying incoming intrigue. They not that they played it badly. I would just say that they didn't go for the intrigue approach. They didn't go for like, oh, I'm going to be smooth and I'm going to try to get it. They didn't go to play that game. They came in and just played a very, no cards up my sleeve. Here's what I, kind of thing, which is fine. And then honesty can be an asset in some cases. Over here, if they are honest about what their purpose is, that's going to not end well for them. It's going to make things more difficult. Because the one thing is while all these different these guys and the other monsters that are there, they're all jockeying for position, but they're not going to betray the cause. They are just in the nature of everything. They're kind of all in on the cause. It's just that right now the cause is kind of nebulous. And so it seems to be okay with them being chaotic, because it is this is a force of chaos that's doing all this together. So the fact is that in this sort of chaotic cloud, this cloud of chaos, it leaves space for the party to move around. At some point, it's that chaos, that cloud is going to start to crystallize, and it's going to become more difficult. And if the party's actions could cause it to crystallize faster, at least in terms of them, because once they get outed of, oh, you're not part of our thing, you're not part of the call, you are, goody goodies, or you're mercenaries, whatever, but you're here for a particular purpose that isn't in our benefit, and you're not part of things, right? Then things will get dicier, especially if they're allowed to communicate. If the goblins get wind, or they reveal what they're doing and they don't eliminate the goblins that know, like the goblins will then try to maybe get help, go talk to the kobolds, or go fetch somebody, ring an alarm bell, whatever it is. That'll be interesting. That will be interesting. Well, that is my game tonight. I think I'm going to call this a stream. I apologize. I will reset up. So at the very front of this thing, I accidentally went in the wrong event and screwed the pooch on that. So I will have to reset everything, but I will put new links and I will set a new event for tomorrow for that interview with Jacob Fleming of In the Shadow of Tower Silveraxe. I'm really looking forward to that. That'll be tomorrow. Same bat time, 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern time. Same bat channel. So come in for that. Give the stream, give the video a thumbs up, even though I messed up at the beginning. I'd appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you guys later. Tank Pal, you're welcome. Thanks for hanging out. Hey, check your Twitter DMs because I DM'd you. So get back to me on that. But everyone else, have a great rest of your afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching or listening to this now or in the future. Cheers.